made me laugh was...
Right, let me just put it on the chair arm and then that'll catch you.
You remember when people used to come to the door and we would pretend we weren't in?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, and the curtains would be open. So instead of like running out the room and things like that, right, we used to stay still. Yeah, and look through the window.
Yeah, well, it's not a person, it's a statue. They've got a statue in there.
Yeah. And that did make me giggle, that Frank. It really did, you know.
What I'll tell you what the funny thing was. My mum actually did say, and you might remember this, about the television. You can put it on, but keep it low.
Yeah.
And you think to yourself, Mum, they've got the technology to know that it's on. But we'd get a knock at the door, and she'd say, "Don't answer the door," and then she'd. And we didn't know whether it was a TV detector van or not, but she'd say, they're in the area, and then there'd be a knock, and then there'd be this silence. And then we'd assume that whoever it was had gone away. And then, of course, we wanted to watch telly, so she'd say, "Well, put it on, but keep it low." My mum had this idea that if you kept it low, they wouldn't be able to detect that you had actually had a telly. Yeah. which is a wonderful thing. What do you think about, while I'm doing this, what do you think about, because I'm planning this weekend to read one of my chapters onto audio, because I think audio gives it another life as well.
It's funny you should say that, right? Because it's something that I've been toying with, right? And I saw something on TV one night, and what it was picture the River Ribble, right?
Right.
And it probably sounds daft, but you got to picture the River Ribble, but you're not looking into the river, right? You're at the side of the bank, right? And it's been cold overnight, and there's frost, and it's sort of melting. But as it's melting, it's dripping into the river, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, right, what a lovely scene that is. Just that. There's no need to look at over there. It's just that little dropping into the water, that kind of aware feeling.
Yeah.
And then I thought to myself, if I put some music in the background, really, really sort of low key, right? You hardly know it's there, but it's there.
Right.
What can I say? A real classic, like Adagio. If you've ever listened to Adagio, it goes on for about 18 minutes. It's really, really calm and soft.
Yeah, like a string type thing.
Yeah. And I was thinking, if you had that, and you had that Adagio in the background, and then you sort of spoke in a soft tone, you know what I mean? It would carry really, really well, And that was the idea I was thinking about this year. And
what, for like your poetry, you mean?
Yeah, and if you think about it, the two things are not too dissimilar. You're telling a story. Sort of like when you write, really, you write in couplets.
Yeah.
Right, and as you end a couplet, right, you bring the music up softly. And I know it sounds like a lot of hard work, but it really isn't, And then as it starts to fade out again, you take up again. And it would be like that with you, with like every second paragraph, you know what I mean? It'd be like people don't want a story where it's like, oh, did you give out? They want a story where you're talking calm, where it's going so slow they can actually take in what you're saying and they can digest it, you know what I mean?
Well, the way I'm thinking, because like I wrote a chapter the other night about treasures, because it's been demolished on my son. And like I said to Lee, because I read a little something to Lee last night, something like it involved my mum. But if you look at the treasures thing, he's coming out whitewashing his stones, right? As you remember, it were beautiful. Treasures at Antiques was a beautiful place at one time of the day with its cannons and everything, weren't it? And what I'm saying is, he comes out and then all of a sudden you have a dialogue with him. What are you doing? I'm just looking, mister. That on a page is, what are you doing? I'm just looking, mister. That in an audio, you have the ability to say, what are you doing? I'm just looking, mister. So, you see what I mean? Just in my voice there, you have the ability to almost change your tone, but it gives the story life, doesn't it?
Yeah, where it will come to life is, you're reading your story and it says, "What are you doing?" And you say, "Nothing, mister." What are you doing? Nothing, mister. Now, if it was something you were reading,
Yeah.
it'd be...
You don't read it in the same thing, do you?
No, you wouldn't.
You don't hear it.
It'd be like, "What are you doing?" And then it'd be like, pause.
Yeah. See, as I'm writing it, I'm seeing the whole thing in front of me. Yeah. I'm hearing him talk, and we did. When somebody said, when you were a kid, when we were growing up, "What are you doing?" "Nothing, mister." You always called him mister or something like that. Yeah. Because that was the way it was then. It's what's got to do with you? You just didn't. When somebody asked you in our generation, "What are you doing?" you always said, "I'm just looking, mister." I think like you look with your hands, you look with your eyes, not with your hands, type thing, innit? Wasn't it though? Yeah. And what I did last night, I read a bit to Lee where it was something my mum was saying, but as I was reading it to Lee, I read it like it was being said.
Yeah.
And I can do that because I but if you read a story sometimes, you can enjoy it, but if you hear it, it gives it another layer.
Yeah, it does.
Almost.
It gives it that sense of reality. You're there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You are there. You're the audience, and you're watching this young lad. You're watching me.
Yeah.
And you can abbreviate and you can punctuate as much as you like in a book.
Yeah.
But you can't catch that ambience. You know what I mean?
Well, I'm not very good at writing in the fact that I don't know where full stops go or commas, and so my writing tends to go from one statement into another. When you're reading it, you actually know where the full stop is.
At the end, when I said to you before, how can I put this? When I said to you before, it take 2 or 3 weeks at the end.
Yeah.
Right, what you do then is you download a free sort of how can I put it? You download. I can't remember the name of the thing, but I know what it does. It takes your grammar. You scan your page, you put it in, and you click, and it will just put all the bits in the right places for you. You know
right.
What I mean? Or it'll punctuate it. You know.
Is it like Word or something?
It is a kind of Word, like an office. You know what I mean?
Because you can put a thing in that as well, can't you? Like a spell check. I make terrible.
They're built into it.
I make terrible errors.
Yeah, that's built into it, and all it'll take is it'll take you 2 minutes to scan your page in, and boom, that one's finished. You know, and boom, you know, and just keep putting it into the file, and it won't take anything like 3 weeks, but then you've got to go back through it.
Yeah.
Slowly, and you've got to it might have changed, so like a Lancashire sort of colloquialism that you used, and made it into an everyday word, you know, and you might want to just...
See, that's another thing about doing the audio. You then have an accent that goes with the story that you're reading. But it's not that. I wanted to give it life. You know, I mean, it's one thing to write it down onto the page, but I think if you hear somebody reading it, like I said, it gives you another layer.
Another dimension,
Yeah, of course it does. And I'm trying to think of years from now, when we've gone, we're long gone, your voice is still heard, reading the story, which is those people like Mitchell and Ryan, and maybe their kids. It's their heritage. It's where they came from.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, as you can see, Derek, because you know better than anybody, I'm not doing a warts and all, because it was much worse than you could ever write, because it was quite desperate at times.
You're right, because I read a piece of yours the other night. Sorry to interrupt you, but
no.
I lose my place in my mind if I don't speak when I should. And I was reading that the other night, you know, when my mum died.
Yeah.
And I thought, I could add so much to that. You know what I mean? Because on the night, he went into the bathroom, and my mum said to me, "Go and see if he's alright." And I knocked on the door, no answer. And pushed you open. I don't know whether you remember, but
Well, I wasn't there, you see.
Yeah.
We were all out.
And I went in, and it was like really difficult to get in.
Mm.
But the worst part about that was it was hard getting out again. You know, and I sat for a minute or two on the end of the bath, and I watched him. And when you said he was vomiting, it was blood.
Yeah.
You know, because he had an ulcer in it.
Duodenal ulcer, yeah.
And I've never seen so much blood in my life. And he was looking at me. It was fucking horrible because I think at some point I was panicking and my mum like fucking pushed the door.
Yeah.
And then I was out, you know what I mean? But I was fucking sat there watching him dying, you know what I mean? And it was like there was so many personal moments just about that bit alone, you know what I mean?
But can you see how I couldn't write that? Because
Yeah.
that's not my story. That's your story. And I don't mean that in a very...
No,
you know, I mean, and I've spoke to people about this over the last week or so, because someone said to me, well, your deck can do this and your deck can do that. And I just said, yeah, he can. I said, and Derek will understand. I have to write it from my
That's it, you're
aspect.
writing it from your perspective.
Absolutely, yeah.
You know what I mean? That's why I knew afterwards, I knew when I was reading it, I thought, that's how Frank saw it.
Yeah.
On the other side of the door. You know what I mean? I remember me and you that night, right? And we sat there and you were talking to me and we were watching. No, we weren't. We were listening to a radio. It was unusual to have the telly on. But you turned the telly off and you put the radio on. And we were listening to music, and it was 1978.
Yeah.
And all the music that was in the charts was there. And it sticks in my mind. You're like Dancing in the City. And If I Had Words to Make a Day for You by, is it Scott Fitzgerald?
Yeah, Scott Fitzgerald, yeah.
And I could go on, Frank. I can remember so many of them songs, right? And when I play them, people say, you know, that's lovely, that. And I think, you've no idea. That was that. The only person who really understands that was me and Frankie, because we were sat there listening to it. And we listened for hours. I don't know whether you remember, but we listened for hours. And there was like a really eerie silence in the house with my mum crying. You know what I mean? And I even at the time, and I ask myself now, was she crying for him, or was she crying for the fact that she was going to be alone for the first time?
It's got to be the alone thing.
I think so.
Because
you had a life of misery, didn't you?
I think there's a time when you're scared, because you think, I mean, it was probably the first time in her life that she was on her own, because she'd left home, as you know, from an abusive father, which I mentioned, to then be married to an abusive husband. So all through her life, as bad as it got, they were there.